The boarding announcement echoed through Gate 47 Flight 829 to Seattle. Was ready, Sarah Mitchell hurried through first class. Her red dress perfectly pressed her briefcase, worth more than most people's monthly rent. She owned Mitchell Industries, 12,000 employees across 4 continents. At 48 she'd built an empire, but she'd also built walls, thick ones, around her heart, around her life. She settled into seat 2A, already thinking about the merger meeting, waiting in Seattle, already planning her next move. That's when she saw him, row 23. A man in a simple navy shirt, maybe 35, strong hands, tired eyes. He was traveling with a little girl. She wore a bright yellow dress, her hair in 2 uneven ponytails, the kind a father does his best with. The girl was crying softly, trying to be brave. Sarah noticed but looked away. Other people's problems weren't her concern. She'd learned that lesson young. The plane took off smoothly. Sarah opened her laptop. Numbers and projections filled the screen. 30 minutes into the flight, she felt it, a tightness in her chest, strange, uncomfortable. She shifted in her seat, tried to breathe deeper. The tightness grew, spreading down her left arm. Her vision started to blur at the edges. No, not now, not here. She couldn't show weakness, couldn't lose control, but her body had other plans. The laptop slipped from her hands. Her breath came in short gasps. She tried to press the call button, missed. Tried again. Everything was moving too slowly. A flight attendant appeared, young, panicking, asking questions. Sarah couldn't answer. Then he was there. The man from row 23, moving quickly but calmly. He knelt beside her seat. His voice was steady, reassuring. "I'm Daniel," he said. "I'm a paramedic. You're having a heart event. I need you to stay calm. Can you do that for me?" Sarah wanted to argue, to say she was fine, but she couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Daniel turned to the flight attendant, his voice commanding, now clear, certain. "Get the AED, call for a doctor. And tell the pilot we might need an emergency landing." His hands were already working, checking her pulse, loosening her collar, making her comfortable. The little girl in the yellow dress appeared beside him, her eyes wide, frightened. "Daddy." Daniel looked at her. His expression softened for just a moment. "Sophie, honey, remember what we practiced. I need you to be brave right now. Can you go sit with the nice lady in our row? I'll be right back, I promise." Sophie nodded, her chin trembling, but she went, trusting her father, believing his promise. Sarah watched through her haze of pain, watched this stranger save her life, watched him work with hands that knew exactly what to do. The AED arrived. Daniel attached the pads, his movements efficient, practiced. He'd done this before, many times. Clear, he said. Sarah's body jerked, the world went white. Then slowly, her breathing eased. The crushing pain began to lift. A doctor appeared from economy. Together, they stabilized her. Daniel stayed beside her the entire time, monitoring her vitals, talking to her in that calm, steady voice, keeping her anchored, keeping her alive. The pilot announced an emergency landing in Denver, 20 minutes away. Sarah tried to thank him, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel shook his head. "Save your strength. We're not done yet." Those 20 minutes felt like hours. Sarah drifted in and out each time she opened her eyes. Daniel was there, watching, waiting, ready. They landed hard. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane. Paramedics rushed aboard. Daniel briefed them quickly, professionally, giving them everything they needed to know. As they lifted Sarah onto the stretcher, she reached for his hand. "Wait, your name, your number, I need to thank you properly." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Then let go, you just did." They took her away. By the time Sarah was stable in the hospital, by the time she could think clearly again, Daniel was gone. The flight had continued to Seattle. He'd reboarded with his daughter, returned to. His seat in row 23 disappeared into his life. Whatever that was, wherever he was going. Sarah spent 3 days in Denver, surgery, recovery time, to think, more time than she'd had in years. Her assistant brought her laptop, her phone, urgent messages from the office. Sarah ignored them all. She kept thinking about Daniel, about the way he'd moved with such purpose, such certainty, about the little girl with the uneven ponytails, about the promise he'd made her, about trust, real trust, the kind Sarah had forgotten existed when she was released. Sarah made calls. She had resources, connections, money, could find anyone except apparently a paramedic named Daniel with a daughter named Sophie who'd been on flight 829. The airline had privacy policies. Passenger information was protected, even for someone who'd saved your life. Weeks passed. Sarah returned to Seattle, to her office on the 40th floor, to her empire, but something had changed. She couldn't stop thinking about those 20 minutes when nothing else mattered. Not the merger, not the stock price, not the next acquisition. Just staying alive, just breathing, just being human. She started asking different questions about her employees, their families, their lives outside the office. She learned things she'd never bothered to know, that her CFO had a son with diabetes, that her head of marketing was caring for her aging father, that people had whole lives, whole worlds, beyond their productivity reports. She established a new program: emergency funds for employees in crisis, better health coverage, family support services. Her board questioned the expense. Sarah didn't care. 3 months after the flight, Sarah was visiting a community health clinic. Her company was funding a new wing. She was there for the ribbon cutting, shaking hands, smiling for cameras. That's when she saw her, the little girl in the yellow dress, older. Now her hair in neater ponytails, but the same bright eyes, the same sweet face. Sophie. The girl turned, looked confused. "How do you know my name?" Sarah's heart was racing for entirely different reasons. "Now I met you on an airplane. Your father helped me. Is he here?" Sophie nodded, pointed across the clinic waiting room, and there he was. Daniel, wearing scrubs, now a stethoscope around his neck. He looked up. Their eyes met. Recognition dawned on his face. Then surprise. Then something else. Something Sarah couldn't quite read. She walked over, her hands trembling slightly. "You disappeared." Daniel smiled, that same calm, steady smile. "You were in good hands. You didn't need me anymore. I had to get Sophie to Seattle. We were moving here. New job, fresh start." Sarah laughed, actually laughed. "You saved my life and just left. I've been trying to find you for months, to thank you, to repay you." Daniel's expression grew serious. "You don't owe me anything. I was doing my job, what any decent person would do. Besides, you already paid me." Sarah frowned, how he gestured around the clinic. This new wing, the equipment, the staff you're funding. Sophie and we're part of the community. This serves. You're helping people like us. People who need it. That's payment enough." Sarah sat down right there in the waiting room. She'd been looking for a way to repay a debt, and she'd already done it without even knowing. "I changed my company's policies," she said. "Quietly, because of you. Because of what happened. I realized I'd built something successful, but I'd forgotten why it mattered." Daniel sat beside her, and now I remember it matters because people matter, not as assets, not as resources, as people. They sat in silence for a moment. Sophie came over, climbed into her father's lap. "Is this the lady you helped, Daddy?" Daniel nodded. "This is her." Sophie looked at Sarah. "Seriously, Daddy was really scared. I could tell, but he stayed calm for you. That's what heroes do." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She who never cried, who prided herself on control. "Your daddy is definitely a hero." Sophie nodded. Solemnly, "I know Mommy knew too. Before she got sick, she always said Daddy had a gift for helping people." Daniel hugged his daughter close. Sarah saw the grief there, still fresh, still tender. "I'm sorry," she said, "for your loss." Daniel nodded. 2 years now, we're managing. Some days better than others. But we're here. We're moving forward. That's all we can do. Sarah understood something then. This man had saved her life while carrying his own grief, his own pain. He'd put it aside to help a stranger because that's who he was. Not because of training, not for recognition, but because helping was as natural to him as breathing. "Can I buy you both dinner?" Sarah asked. "Please let me at least do that." Daniel smiled. "Only if it's pizza. Sophie's favorite." Sophie grinned with extra cheese. They went to a small place near the clinic. Nothing fancy, red checkered tablecloths, plastic cups, the kind of place Sarah never went. It was perfect. They talked for hours about Sophie's new school, about Daniel's work at the clinic, about the community they were building, about second chances, about moving forward. Sarah told them about her own life, the loneliness of success, the walls she'd built, the way that flight had cracked them open. Sometimes, Daniel said, we need a reminder of what really matters, of who we want to be. You got yours at 30,000 feet. I got mine in a hospital room watching my wife slip away, knowing I couldn't save her, no matter how much I knew, how much I'd trained. Some things are beyond our control, but how we live, after how we choose to move forward, that's up to us. Sarah nodded, understanding, really understanding for the first time in years when dinner ended. Sarah didn't offer money, didn't try to write a check. She just asked, "Can we do this again? Can Sophie and I be friends?" Daniel looked at his daughter. Sophie was nodding enthusiastically. "I think we'd like that." Months turned into years. Sarah became part of their lives, not as a benefactor, not as someone repaying a debt, but as family. She taught Sophie about business, about ambition, about building dreams. Daniel taught Sarah about balance, about presence, about finding meaning. In the small moments together, they created something neither had expected: a family not by blood but by choice, by gratitude, by love. On the 5th anniversary of that flight, they went back to the clinic. The wing Sarah had funded was thriving. Thousands of people had been helped, lives had been saved, including hers, not just on the plane but every day since, when she'd learned to live. Again, really live, not just exist, not just achieve, but connect, care. Be human. Daniel stood beside her, Sophie between them, 17, now planning to study medicine, wanting to help people like her father. "You know," Sarah said, "I spent months trying to find you, trying to repay you, and now I realize you gave me something I can never repay. You gave me my life back, not just my heartbeat but my heart." Daniel smiled, that same steady smile. "We gave each other something. You gave Sophie and me family, community, purpose." That's the thing about kindness. It doesn't work like a transaction. It multiplies, it spreads, it comes back in ways you never expect. Sarah looked at the clinic, at the people streaming in and out, getting help, getting care, getting hope. "I used to think success was about what you built, but it's not. It's about who you become and who you help." Along the way, Sophie took both their hands. "Daddy says you can't save everyone, but you can save someone, and that someone can save someone else, and it keeps going like ripples in water." Daniel nodded from my daughter, the wise one. They stood together. 3 people brought together by crisis, bound together by choice. Proof that sometimes the person you save saves you right back in ways you never saw coming, in ways that matter most. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about unexpected connections and the power of simple kindness. Leave a comment sharing a time when a stranger changed your life in ways they never knew.